All right, Pete, welcome to Ringwood Family Tree.
Hello, Teresa.
I'll just set things off and then I really hope a lot of it's just take me down the road.
Oh, yeah.
But so here's the premise. Along the way, I heard that you adopted the challenge to read a biography of all our presidents. I found
Correct.
that impressive. It occurred to me the other day, where are you on that journey? And you
Yeah.
said, hey, let's talk. So, how did that idea come about?
So I will start. Well, actually, the first thing I want to show you, Teresa, is because I am a little nervous, but oh, you can't see it. So I've got my iPad and I have a list of all the presidents because I don't remember some talking about them, who was in what order. But anyways, we'll go over that later.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I can. Yeah, you
I
can't
see
see it. Oh,
Lincoln. Okay, wait a minute.
yes. Yeah. No, I think it's my.
Oh, it's the blur.
Yeah, it's the blur. But anyways, so a good friend of mine, and you know the family, Mark Connor, he out of the blue. This was back when George Bush was president. Okay, Junior, the younger George Bush. Somehow we met up, we were talking, and he sent me this book, Team of Rivals.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Team of Rivals, Doris Kearns Goodwin. Obviously, Mark is a big Auburn history buff, and obviously you've got William H. Seward and Lincoln. There's a lot of references to Auburn in this book. So he sent that to me, which was really nice, and I read it, and I enjoyed it so much. I'm like, you know what? It'd be pretty cool if I read about every single president. So that's kind of how it gets. Mark Connor's the one who started this whole
What
thing.
what year would you guess that to be?
Well, I'm going to say because my first book after, and again, I will go over this in a little bit. I've got another. I can't. Yeah, you can't see. Oh, there you go.
There he is.
George Bush. Um, Decision Points. This was the first one I read after Team of Rivals, and I don't know why I chose this, but I decided to go backwards. So somewhere during the Bush presidency is when this started.
Okay.
So
Pete,
we're
let's
talking.
let's hold off for 1 second because I am gonna try to unblur the background.
Okay.
I don't think it did. I just thought it might. Maybe
No, you,
mine's unblurred, but yours isn't.
let me try to unblur mine real quick.
Because then if you do hold something up, it'll be clearer. So you went, well, you're doing that team of rivals
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
to
Yeah, good.
Bush 2.
There
Okay.
we go. Decision points. Yep. Bush, George Bush. So let's see, Obama was 2008 to 2016. So I would say, so Bush wrapped, I would say it's probably 2008
Okay.
because then he came out with this book after he wrapped up his presidency.
Okay.
So I've been doing this for 16 years. Oh,
Oh my gosh, Peter, that is so uh impressive, but I mean you really kind of dove into it not in a race.
no, not it. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what, 3 books a year? Yeah. Um, so I started with Bush, and then and it had just come out, so I'm like, I'll get that, and then I got that, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to start working my way back. So after that, Clinton and George H.W. Bush, and I started. So my decision was to go from the present all the way to the past. So that's
If
kind of
you
how I
had to do it over again, would you still go that way?
probably not.
Yeah.
No, I probably, because it makes, it always seems like every book I read is stepping back into something that I've already read, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, if I had started with Washington, it, more chronological and it would kind of build on itself instead of just, you know, when, George Bush was a kid, whatever, Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter, it's kind of backwards. So I would have done it the other way had I done it. But once I read Bush, I'm like, let's go backwards and work
Yeah.
my way. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
totally on the side, but I think about number one, mom would be so proud of you.
Oh, it would have been fun
And
because I
dad.
know. Oh yeah, and I can see mom, Oh, so what are you reading? You know, what president? Oh, I remember Eisenhower, or any of it would spur some good conversation for mom, I guarantee you.
Well, Pete, you really did launch into the Ringwood family and into your adult life in so many good ways. But I think mom was a little worried about not going the liberal arts education route.
Oh, of course, of
So there you
course.
go. You've immersed yourself in a lot of American history, and so that's pretty cool.
And and it even goes to, I remember one time we were in Washington, D.C. with the family. I think Hunter had a hockey tournament or something. And we went to this place. I think it's still there. It's called the Newseum.
Oh, it isn't, but
Have
I
you been?
did go there.
Oh,
Fascinating.
did you go there?
Yeah.
Literally, they had to drag me out of there. I mean, they were like, "Come on, come on." I'm like, "No, no, no, I gotta read, gotta read, gotta read." And anytime there's statues with little, plaques to read, they're like, "Oh, there he goes, there he goes. He's reading up on the history of whatever we were looking at." But yeah, yeah, it's always been I love American history. I think that's been my thing. So
did you have Mr. Martin in high school?
yeah, I
Okay.
did. Yes, and I had David Ringwood as my brother.
Yeah. I
A
love it.
little bit of
Oh,
influence there.
oh, Peter, that's so, so cool. So 16 years, Connor kind of got you started. And all right, so did you buy the Bush book or was it a gift, did you say?
No, I bought it. No, I'll give you an interesting. So it's funny. So Bush, I bought a book. Clinton, I bought a book. And then George H.W. Bush, from that point on, it all became electronic books.
Okay.
Okay. And the funny thing is, I just found this out. Hunter and our accounts are kind of linked. I don't know enough about it, but apparently Hunter's paid for my last 5 electronic books. And he just
Oh.
no, he didn't know. I was charging it to his credit card or his debit card or whatever. And finally he's like, wait a minute, what's going on? He's like, Dad, you're paying for, through Apple or whatever.
Yeah.
It's on my account. I've been paying for those books.
Well, can he read them on a Kindle too?
I think he could. Now the question would be, would he? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? He might have to wait until he's a dad who some friend sends him a book and
yeah,
off
and
he
starts it. Yeah.
goes. So Peter, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and then we'll get into specifics, is how did you select the biography?
Sure.
Autobiography, a biographer writing, did you read reviews? I mean, eh, there are an awful lot of like Lincolns and
Yeah, yeah.
person.
And again, obviously the Lincoln one I had, so that was a no-brainer. But you know what my logic was, and it was kind of, I mean, whatever. I looked at the length of the book. So I didn't want to read like a 125-page book. So most of these have been in the 800 plus page range.
Oh,
So again, if I'm going to really learn about the president, and again, I, I don't know if the author was that great or whatever, but my assumption was if there's 800 pages on this president, it's probably got a lot of detail in there. So it was mostly looking at, something that had good length to it.
did you read any reviews?
Oh yeah, normally, I mean, if they,
Yeah,
anything had to be a 4-star or
yeah,
higher. If I saw
yeah,
anything that was poorly reviewed, I wouldn't touch it. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
4-star and a lot of pages.
Isn't
So
that something? Far
yeah,
cry from like the sixth grade kid that's got to read a book and do a book report, and you're like, ah, how many pages? It's
yeah.
the
Well,
opposite now.
what's interesting though, some of the obscure presidents, it's almost impossible to find a book that's that long. So some of the, as I go through and
Like
look at some,
Fillmore?
Fillmore wasn't too bad. Where did I see some? Rutherford B. Hayes. you know, some James Buchanan, Franklin Pierce, you know, those guys, like, it was hard to find biographies that were very long on them. So those may have been, you know, a couple hundred, 200, 300 pages long.
Okay,
So,
okay. Oh,
yeah.
I love, I like, I like stuff like that, like a project that takes you down a pathway and you're gonna get a lot out of it. Not a chore, but a pathway that you chose to take.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta go back to my questions here. So
Sure.
16 years.
Yeah.
Did you, this is just, this kind of helps set the format, like how you kind of got involved in all this.
Mhm.
Did you find that you read some biographies by the same author?
You know what? I did not really. There were some, I have to look at it. There were some like presidential series. Was it Schlesinger or I can't remember who it was. But you know, on some of these obscure ones,
Mm-hmm.
those were the same author. You
Okay.
know, the ones that were, it was kind of like a presidential series. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was kind of my fallback. If I couldn't find anything good,
Yeah.
I'd go into that series. And you know what? I'll look that up and then I'll shoot you an email or something on that. Cause yeah, there was some type of presidential series.
Yeah.
Yeah, grabbed a couple.
Well, the good thing, Peter, is, I'm not going to ask you to name the presidents in order, but I am going to add to this very important blog two YouTube videos that I found. One is how to memorize the presidents, coming up with kind of a image related funny story. And then the other one is a song. So your siblings might want to maybe not spend 16 years gaining insight into the president, but maybe we can all wow you at our next gathering by singing the
Awesome.
president's song.
Actually, I think you had that at the top of your
Yeah,
notes. Is that, I was like,
yeah,
what is that?
yeah, yeah. You can go you can see where I go for my information. The librarian. Let's go to
Oh,
YouTube.
yeah.
All right. Well, I guess um I guess like I'm gonna let you run with it. What surprised you? What'd you find distressing? Um, Interesting. The arc of American history. Who were the duds? I mean, I suppose that a lot of things might have surprised you. I don't know. Run with it. Tell me your thoughts.
Um, how do I start? Uh, so let's start with surprises. And again, if I'm not looking at the screen, it's only because I'm zipping through all the presidents and I'm looking at their pictures. So, surprise. George H.W. Bush, great sense of humor,
Love it.
fantastic sense of humor. Um, Jimmy Carter, now,
Oh,
because he just turned 100,
yeah.
and I think I'm getting this right. You know, he was only 4 years. He had the accords with Egypt and Israel,
Yep.
and then he actually, which I didn't know, I just found out, he started uh, FEMA,
Oh,
created the Department of Education and the Department of Energy.
I can imagine the energy because that was the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah, yeah. So he
Yeah.
did the Department of Education or Energy or Department of Education as well. So yeah, I heard that, and I just heard that on the news the other day, and I'm like, man, I don't think people even knew some of the things that he
Right.
accomplished. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Um, Richard Nixon, that guy he was a nut. Do you know he had his own secret office that wasn't even at the White House?
No. Where was it?
Yeah,
Like
some
someplace in
other.
the United States, you mean?
Oh, it was within Washington D.C. It was in one of those buildings, but it was so like nobody would know where he's at, so he could do whatever he was doing.
Did
So
you sense paranoia in,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, yep. Lyndon Johnson,
Cool
civil
dude.
rights,
Yeah.
took over for Kennedy. Um, Kennedy, a life. cut way too short. They just all have their own little, Dwight D. Eisenhower, just a military genius. Harry Truman and Franklin Roosevelt, World War II. Interesting story about Franklin Roosevelt. And again, if I'm rambling, just let me, I'm just
No, it's
through and
great.
going through this. Franklin Roosevelt. So Herbert Hoover was the president before Roosevelt. And we were right in the middle of the Great Depression, right? Herbert Hoover was trying to get some things done before he finished office, and Roosevelt essentially hung him out to dry. And then Roosevelt almost kind of let things fall apart. And then he took over and fixed things as opposed to getting started with fixing things under Hoover.
Oh, sound familiar?
Yeah, yeah. Man. Warren Harding, his was a disaster. His cabinet was the most crooked cabinet ever. Yeah, there's just so many different things.
Okay, so tell me, where was Warren Harding in,
So
like, was he World War I? I don't even know this guy
he
very well.
was 1921 to 23, so right after
Oh,
World War One. Yep,
okay, so we've got a lot of stuff going on in the 20s.
yep, yep. You had the Great Depression and
Depression, what they called it, I can't even think about it. No liquor,
Prohibition.
prohibition.
Yep.
Isn't it interesting, Pete, all right, right now it's October 2024, especially where you live, you can't go 3.5 minutes without probably a political uh, 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 commercial or whatever. And yet here we're just talking about people and the life of our country, not he was a Republican, he let it fall apart. He was a
Oh yeah,
it's so
yeah.
much of just this, as much as I think about our map of our country being, this, just this cool combination of states that are unique and different, including the people and the terrain. So are all these guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. And now that I'm on Washington, so I'm he's the last. Although I'll do Washington, then I have to go back and do Obama. And
Oh, okay, okay.
I was now I'm going to get political. I wasn't going to read a Trump biography,
Yeah.
but I've changed my mind because I'm going to find an unauthorized autobiography of Trump because that will probably be true if it's unauthorized. You know what I mean?
It might be
So
written by his niece Mary.
no, not if his. Oh yeah, yeah, maybe that's true. That's true. And then I figure by the time I'll finish those, Biden will have something out. But one of the things that I thought was amazing, and again, I'm bouncing all over.
I
So,
love it.
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Monroe, Madison, the communication of how they would take months and sit on a boat and sail over to Europe or send a letter to the King of England that would take 2 months to get to him. So it's really amazing to see, I mean, at the time Washington was president, the majority of the United States wasn't even the United States.
Right.
I mean, it was just so it's amazing to see what it was when Washington, was the first president and how long it took to communicate, how long it took to travel. And now, you mentioned, every 10 seconds there's a political ad on TV now, and information's got to be instantaneous and polling and all, polling didn't, when Thomas Jefferson was running against John Adams, there was no polling going on. So that's probably the biggest difference that I see from the beginning to the end, or the beginning to the present. So
But it makes you think, Pete, like maybe that um not like it is a pause, it was the reality that they had to be patient, they moved slower, things processed differently, gave you time to think,
Yeah.
maybe even revise, change, but yeah, I kind of think maybe there's some benefit to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
With
Especially like you said, time to think.
think and retain it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hardly think about um a a lot of stuff that happened in a previous administration, then it comes back and I'm like, oh yeah, that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting philosophical uh change and not going back, and yet it's all still based on the same principles.
It is. And as you bring that up, Teresa, one thing also, education is different. These early guys, they studied, different languages, different cultures, different civilizations, all
Mhm.
the, it was, it covered more. And I think it's more refined now. It's not as worldly as it was when, Thomas Jefferson, started the University of Virginia, or,
Right.
it's the, the education now is definitely much different than it was back in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that something? And I mean, I think you can look at it from the Socrates, all our philosophers that kind of
Yeah.
built that mountain of here's how you think, here's
Yeah.
how we can employ in discourse. And
Yeah.
then I think of, I used to say this to students at the college when we kind of studied the evolution of higher education. It was it was the clergy that were literate.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you had this um kind of new premise of how you could be a country based on religion. Um, and yet it was Christianity teaching white men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
we've had slivers for a long time.
Yeah. But and now think about it, Teresa. Now look ahead with artificial
Oh,
intelligence.
yeah.
It's we are entering into a new phase pretty quickly.
Oh, it's surpassing us. We don't
Yeah.
even know. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
too might be the uh, you know, uh Facebook ad or TikTok video
Oh, yeah.
just heard ain't real.
Or Julie and I are talking about, we're going to go out to dinner in Phoenixville or whatever. Next thing, something pops up on her phone for dinner in Phoenixville. It's like, are you kidding me? It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy. It's crazy.
Oh, all right, back to books where I
All
feel
right.
a little safer. So, let's just kind of go back into that. So you went backwards and
Yeah.
some surprises. Um, what about some shocking things? I mean, we've had assassinations, we've had presidents that died quickly in office. There have been other, there's been a little bit of ugliness, I'm sure, along the way. What were some of those things that you discovered?
As I go through, well, the one thing that I noticed as I look through these, it's interesting. There are time periods where there are a lot of bad, I won't say bad, but not very influential presidents. So, like Andrew Jackson was the seventh president, and he was a two-term. And then after that, between Andrew Jackson and Lincoln, okay, we had Martin Van Buren, one term. William Henry Harrison died in office after a month.
Oh,
John Tyler took his place and wrapped up one term. James K. Polk, one term. Zach Taylor died in office. Millard Fillmore took over for him, 1 term in office. Franklin Pierce, 1 term in office. James Buchanan, 1 term in office. That's a lot. That is from 7 through 15,
Yeah.
all 1 term presidents. So that is from, let's see, Jackson wrapped up in 1837. So from 1837 to 1861. So what is that? 24 years. Not very good presidents, right? I look at all those guys and I can't, nothing really rings a bell to say, oh yeah, he did this or he accomplished this. So that was the one eye-opening thing. And I was, one of the things that I was really looking forward to with this project is, yeah, I want to know about James K. Polk. Who is he? Where's he from? And that was an interesting read, all the way from Buchanan back to Martin Van Buren. Very obscure guys. Very obscure.
You're prompting a lot of questions. I don't even need to look at my yellow sheet of paper here anymore. But with what you just said, what was that? Like 26 years or 24 years of 1 term presidents at a time when, I mean, isn't this like the Industrial Revolution? I mean, there was growth of the country.
Absolutely.
At this
Absolutely.
time.
Huge growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So a couple things that I'm wondering about is, there's a sense of beauty in the option of a 1 term president. But you can also see how a country, even if it wasn't as big as it is now, especially in terms of population, how it's hard to get a lot done.
Yeah.
In
4 years is not a long time.
Think about it. That's high school. That's college for most of us.
Yeah. And what was interesting too? During that time, you didn't have a running mate. They separately voted for the vice president. So the president had no idea who his vice president was going to be.
And so could you have a vice president of a different party?
You could. Yeah. Now, normally that didn't happen because, whatever party won. But, it's interesting. You look at, so Zachary Taylor died in office and Millard Fillmore took over. Zachary Taylor didn't pick Millard Fillmore to be his vice president. And all of a sudden Millard Fillmore turned into the president.
Yeah.
Because Zach Taylor died. Yeah.
How about that for a piece of trivia, Pete? And you think we watched, the VP debate the other night, and what were they saying? VPs didn't even do a debate until the late 60s.
Yeah.
And that was just with the advent of television.
Yep.
So, interesting. Another quick question, if you remember.
Yeah.
Were you, are most of our presidents from the Northeast?
If you include Virginia, would you consider Virginia to be in the Northeast? Then,
I think we can even say East Coast, East.
Yeah, absolutely. Most on the East, I think Virginia has the most. And then, Midwest, you had Lincoln, Illinois, and stuff like that. But out West, I guess Reagan. There's not. It's definitely concentrated in the Northeast and then secondly Midwest.
It's kind of illustrates how young we are still as a country because of that concentration of. That's where we all, they landed, we started, we had our colonies, and then you branched out, but the political parties.
Yeah. And then you listen to things, in Europe, this church was built in, 1200 or, just, we're just like, we're babies. We're absolute babies. Yeah.
And yet, Pete, that kind of goes back to what you were saying with Carter and Department of Education, how education is different. Kind of that European, you know, uh, we learn so much from the past.
Oh yeah.
We were just we are such a young country, and we're
Yeah.
also a world now of instantaneous everything.
But, and that's a good point, Teresa. You take whatever, you could probably take the first 100 years of the United States, and they would look at Europe for examples and things to follow or copy or whatever. I think now it's past that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that we're almost 250 years old, it's looking at, what did Franklin Roosevelt do, or what did Lyndon Johnson? It's now old enough where we're just, looking back at the past of the U.S. as opposed to, well, what did they do in Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we probably had our early, shakers mimic what they wanted and what we don't want. I mean, that's the whole point of this. And then how quickly we became like world leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I got a fun piece of trivia for you. Back to Lincoln and Seward, kind of where you started with all this. I was doing a little digging around on Seward, and I was putting this, I was doing a little work on the relationship between Seward and Harriet Tubman. And I thought it was fascinating that so much of Seward's work during the Lincoln administration, he was in Europe. He was traveling throughout Europe to convince European countries not to get involved in the Civil War. Don't take a side. I never knew that. And back to what you were saying about the chug, 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 I'm taking a boat over there. This isn't going to happen over a long weekend.
No, he's not an Anthony Blinken going over there, 13 times in 2 months.
Right.
No.
Right.
He goes over there and you don't see him for months.
Exactly.
And a lot of it is just getting over on the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seward was interesting. He really he was very influential, during Lincoln's presidency. As a matter of fact, the whole, the team, the whole concept behind Team of Rivals is Lincoln, he pulled in all his rivals, which was brilliant. But there's something about Seward. He had Lincoln's ear. So
well, I think there are certain individuals that have that presence and really like what they're doing. They're just, I felt like when I read about LBJ, like him or not with his style, he loved being a politician. And I kind of get that feeling that Seward loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I had these important questions. Something had popped in my head, but it went right out. From your reading, who do you think? I would like to ask this in two different ways. The first one is, which president do you think accomplished the most, but also maybe a president that accomplished a lot that might not be the one that contemporary society would say? Like maybe it's one of the ones that, from long ago.
Yeah. Well, I got to give
accomplishments.
Yeah. A little head, I think Carter's kind of underrated. People don't realize everything that he did. You got to, I mean, there's, the ones that everybody thinks of, Lincoln, obviously, he saved the country. Roosevelt.
Yes.
Franklin. But he was a 4-term? I think he was a 4-term president. So he had a long time to accomplish stuff,
Can
and
I
that,
ask, did it end with him? How come
yes.
he got 4 terms?
Yeah, it was unlimited at the time. Let me look real quick. Sorry, can you still see me?
I can.
Oh, okay, because I'm looking at my president's list here. So 33 45. So that's 12 years. But so he died during his 4th term. So at that time it was unlimited. You could have gotten, and I think right after Roosevelt, it became 2 terms at the most. So it was
Okay.
because of him they switched it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But again, talking about Social Security, I mean, that's an amazing thing, that he started and is still active, you know, 80 years later. So, again, hats off to a guy like him. Again, Lincoln, and maybe it's because these are the last ones that I've read about. It's pretty amazing what, and I got to give credit to all of these guys: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. They were all part of the Revolution. They really set the stage for who we are as a country now.
Did you feel like when you read these biographies, it's
Mhm.
not just their term of office. A lot of these were the whole man.
Oh, yeah, they are,
That
and that's
that crew right there,
yeah, yeah.
ethical? Did you feel that they were?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all 5 of them. There's no buddy system. They were, between Adams and Jefferson writing the Declaration of Independence, and you know Madison and Monroe, the Constitution, those documents. They didn't like write those in a half an hour.
Right.
Those took a lot of work, and you talk about critical structure for a country that was, hanging by a thread. Yeah, there was no time for favorites or anything like that. They were doing what was truly in the best interest of the country. No doubt in my mind.
Did
All
you
5 of them.
All right, so with that 5, do you feel like was it explored in any of these biographies? Was it anything specific? Was it um opportunity? Why did they come to the US? I mean, we all learn as kids like religious persecution and blah blah blah, but
Yeah. And again, just opportunity. It was a wide open country, and there was just a lot of opportunity for these guys to come in, and and a lot of it went back to even their parents who came over and got them settled, and so yeah, it was. Yeah, again, I think it was just. I think what drove those guys is, yeah, they didn't want to be ruled by England. I mean, it was simple as that. They were on a different continent. They wanted to set up their own, government, and they were dedicated to getting that done. I mean, reading about Washington now, it's unbelievable that they won. I mean, it was just a ragtag group of guys that hardly had clothes,
yeah.
let alone guns and ammunition and everything that they needed. It was unbelievable that Washington won that Revolutionary War. It's amazing. And then to let hand it off to Adams and Jefferson, and really set up the structure, is freedom. That's what those guys want. They wanted
Yeah.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it was religion or political or whatever, they wanted to be free. And that's, we owe a lot to all 5 of those guys.
Well, you're inspiring me But I guess too, Pete, I can't help but sit here and feel, a little nervous right now. And, you're talking about these five guys, which I love. Doris Kearns Goodwin would love that, the guys. But, that feeling as parents, we want better for our kids. We want safety, happiness, future, opportunity. Yeah, but I fear that some freedom here is being challenged right now.
Well, it's to me, I think it's freedom both ways. So one way, taking away freedoms like the freedom to choose.
Mhm.
Um, but on the other hand, exaggerating freedoms like the right to bear arms.
Good
Our
point.
founding fathers were not thinking of an AR-15
No,
when they said the right to bear arms.
no.
But people today think that that's their right. So freedom's, taking away, but exaggerating. I think there's really two sides to freedom that concern me, to be honest with you.
I think that's such a good point, Pete, that's kind of one of the luxuries that we have rights.
Yeah,
One of those rights is to speak. But I guess I'm kind of stuck on that early philosophical stance to think critically through things, that you had these founding fathers that were really thinking ahead. It
yeah,
wasn't for the moment, or
yeah,
even
yeah.
our lifetime seems like a
Yep.
moment.
I remember, Teresa, during COVID, I think I was talking to Julie and I said, you know what? Our As a country, our biggest strength is also our biggest weakness, and it's freedom. And people were exercising their freedom to not wear masks, to not
Yeah,
protect others
yeah,
under the guise of freedom.
yeah.
But I really believe that it is our biggest strength, and it can also be our biggest weakness as well.
Recognize it allows you to pause and then maybe understand other perspectives, though.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, I'm
So
going to take you on another journey here. And,
let's do it.
you may know this stuff, you may not. Who knows? Pete, in your journey, was there a president that was connected to um, expanding the West?
Oh, absolutely. I think James K. Polk had a big impact on the West. Let me look at that. Let me look at that. There
Yeah,
was a
I'm just
range there
curious.
where we were, um, we got Texas from Mexico, and let me see where Polk is at.
Yeah, well, you're looking at that. That's an interesting concept. Like, I didn't even think about, like, within these presidential administrations acquiring a new state.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was big, and yeah, I'm pretty sure James K. Polk had a lot to do with that. Um, I don't.
Just our roadways and
Oh, yeah, but even that, you had Texas was part of Mexico as well as part of California. Um, like the Oregon, Washington area was part of Canada. Um, well, obviously Florida, Spain had Florida, Louisiana, the Louisiana Purchase. Yeah, there was. Boy, and that's an interesting question. I really, I'm thinking in the James K. Polk mid 1800s.
okay.
There was a lot of expansion. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
I gotta believe round railroads too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
well, remember, we've got David Ringwood who can come on here and when
Oh,
this
he can
goes
correct
up,
me.
he'll be commenting, saying,
Oh, yeah.
and that's good. That's good. We like that. Pete, it just kind of is astounding to me that I'm like, oh yeah, we acquired, I use that word, acquired states and
Yeah.
administration. But I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
we were uh, 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 the way this country treated Native Americans, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it's not always a pretty story.
No, not at all. And the way, yeah, the way the Native Americans were treated, especially like, Andrew Jackson was not good to the Indian
Oh,
like that. Yeah. So, yeah. As I look through these, I'm like, Andrew Jackson kind of, he was kind of like Trump a little bit. It was his way or the highway.
is he
So,
Georgia? Was he from Georgia?
no, I'm thinking like Kentucky or Tennessee.
Okay.
I
All
think
right, but the
Tennessee.
South.
David he'll correct me on that one. I'm thinking Tennessee.
Okay.
That's
All
where I
right.
think Jason's from. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Anybody come off as a real dud?
yeah. You know who I wasn't? Where is he? I was not impressed with our. See that? Oops, he must be back a little. Our 21st president, Chester Arthur. Yeah, Chester Arthur, just like he took care of all his buddies.
Oh,
Yeah, he gave them all. They called them the spoils system. And a lot of these presidents, they would spend, they would get inaugurated, and then they would open their doors at the White House for people to come in, and it would be thousands of people asking for jobs in the
oh,
administration. He'd spend a lot of time dealing with that. And Chester Arthur, he took care of his buddies. He
no.
gave them some nice jobs, and as I read through that, I'm like, yeah, this guy's he's not a he's not a straight shooter. So. But yeah, Chester Arthur, 21st president.
Okay, he's the
Yeah.
dud. But
Yeah,
I was also thinking, you brought up Carter
yes.
and you gave a whole list of like all these one-term presidents. And I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes that's viewed as yeah, you weren't good, voted you out. But um did you have any other presidents? I was kind of curious, aside from Roosevelt and maybe some of the earlier ones.
Uh-huh.
You get 4 or 8 years, but you got a
Yep.
life before it and you got a life after it. Did you find out anything that was interesting or surprising about these, not many guys when you think about it, 46
Yep.
presidents? Anybody do anything cool before they became president or cool after?
Uh, was well, like William Howard Taft. I might be wrong on this, but I think William Howard Taft was on the Supreme Court either before or after he was president.
That is an interesting one. And
Yes.
between Mike and Dave, you hear from Congress to presidency, but
Yes.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's a
And
good one.
then again, um, I hope this never happens again, but Grover Cleveland won and then lost and then won. So that's a hint towards our present
Yeah.
situation. So he's the only president to win a second term after he lost. Yeah.
Was there any background on the why that happened?
You know what? Now what? Thought no, that was Teddy Roosevelt. Again, help me out, Dave. I think he ran as a third party candidate and messed up William Howard Taft. I remember that. So he split the vote by running again.
Oh, okay.
Um, But yeah, no, Grover Cleveland and then Benjamin Harrison won. And yeah, it's interesting. Grover Cleveland, Democrat, Benjamin Harrison, Republican, and then back to Grover Cleveland, Democrat. So it wasn't anything internal party. It
Okay.
was cross party lines, but I can't remember what actually pushed him out and then got him back. In all likelihood, 1889, 1893, I would bet money it was some type of recession, some
Oh,
issue with the economy,
yep.
because
I
that
know.
tends to, and that's kind of what happened to Bush
Yep.
Senior. He ran. He was the Iraq War. His approval rating was like 80%, the highest of all time, and within a year he had lost the presidency. It was
Well,
unbelievable. How yeah.
and then, what is it? Dana Carvey's in my head doing,
Oh, taxes.
oh, no.
I can do it. Not gonna do it, Teresa. I'm not gonna do it. And the video of him bowling, that didn't help either.
Oh,
You see that one? He
yeah.
did a face plant when he was bowling.
Oh.
Uh,
Pete, this also leads me into the question of going backward. You see how it's a crazy complicated process to run for president.
yeah, yeah.
And so over the course of our country, were there any significant changes or things that jumped out at you on that whole process of running for president and, assuming office?
Well, yeah, like if you go back, again, technology has a huge impact. Take Kennedy
Yeah.
and debating Nixon, first time on television. That I personally think that was one of the things that catapulted Kennedy to the presidency. People were able to watch these guys on TV,
Yep.
and Kennedy looked like a movie star, and Nixon looked like he was, you know, wearing paint or what. He just he looked terrible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that kind of changed. That again, I think I'm pretty sure that was the first televised debate between presidents. So that was a definite change in how presidents run for office. Big change there. Um,
Perception. It's
yeah.
not necessarily you open up your newspaper in the evening and you sit down and read, or even further back, the newspaper is posted in the window and you
Oh,
read
yeah.
it
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, back to what we talked about earlier, communication and speed of information. It's just, you know, you know, I always tell my kids, I go, just remember, if you post something on the internet, it will always be there.
Yep. Yep.
And back in the 1800s, that wasn't the case. Yeah. Yeah.
How about money? How has money we woven its supportive or evil uh clause into presidencies?
It's interesting. I look at, I don't, I, I look at these older presidents. I don't think, especially early on, like, Washington and Adams and those guys, they were constantly in debt,
Yeah.
constantly. So the early guys, money was not. It was a struggle. These guys, and obviously none of these guys did it for the money.
Right.
But as you get, as I'm looking through the list here, I'm looking at all these guys, and I'm like, I don't see any as, became incredibly wealthy or were wealthy when they went in or were wealthy when they were after. Um, uh, Kennedy came from an affluent family, so that's one of the first.
Mhm.
His dad had certainly had influence. Um, guys like Carter wasn't wealthy.
Right.
Reagan, Bush, as I think you look at the newer presidents now, there are so many opportunities after the presidency to become wealthy, whether it's speaking engagements and stuff like that. But, I'm sure, if I look from George H.W. Bush, Clinton, George Bush, or Obama, Trump, Biden, there's no concern or no issue from a wealth standpoint for any of those guys. And that was not the case early on. Those guys, they wrapped up as president and they just went back to, normal life. And a lot of them, again, a lot of these guys were just constantly in debt, constantly early on. Jefferson, Adams, Washington to some degree. It's kind of sad.
I'm just kind of getting a vision in my head that when I said to you ethical men, and you said absolutely, they built the foundation, they built the strong foundation, but it took a long time. They were all the foundation guys. You get to our later years, you realize that there is that string of legacy.
Yeah.
And you mentioned absolutely. Bush and Kennedy and so and it makes sense that these founding fathers were so focused, because what you said earlier, it was all about freedom.
It was all about freedom. And again, and now you look at the newer presidents, and they, from a financial standpoint, are reaping the benefits based on the sacrifices of the earlier presidents.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. You can see a definite.
Yeah. And yet, Pete, I think of like what's going on in the world today. And I thought, how you maybe think about a new job and you're gonna maybe apply for this job. And then you think, I don't think I want that. I wonder if I was running for president right now, I might say, holy moly, what's going on in this world? Nope, I'm out. I'm not applying for it anymore. Good luck, everybody. It's like no other job.
And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, it's a difficult job. And you look at all of them, even Obama. Look at the day they started and the day they finished. Look at Jimmy Carter on the day he started and the day he finished. It takes a lot out of them. It's a 24/7, 365 days a year for 4 straight years or 8.
And that doesn't change, just like the early days. They had to give everything for establishing a Declaration of Independence, a Constitution. The other thing I was thinking, Peter, is life expectancy too. You're talking about, a lot of the presidents you read lived to the ripe old age of 63, but we have that longevity now.
Franklin Pierce died when he was 65. And not even that's not even like in office died. They're all early on. They're all James K. Polk, 54. I'm 58. Life expectancy is a lot different.
Well, what are we missing? You think, well, I'm looking, I know my last few questions, so why don't you share what else you want to say, and my last few are just kind of funny ones.
Actually, it's spurred something now that I'm wrapping this up. And again, I got Obama, Trump, and Biden to go, so I got a little ways. But I think I have a new goal now after this.
Let's hear.
And that is to visit every home of each president.
Oh, Pete, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking I might do that. And it's interesting. Last year, we went to Julie and I went to Mount Vernon, Washington. Yeah, so I've been there, and now yeah, I'm going to start looking at this to see. And it's interesting that like Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. I think they're all Virginia guys. So it's not like it's not like I'd have to travel all over the place. I think I could knock a bunch of these out in 1 year. But yeah, I'm
Next time
thinking.
you're in Auburn, I'll take you down to Fillmore, Glen, and
Oh
Moravian.
yeah, yeah. Actually, you know what? Sean Herbert was telling me the other day. He was driving by there, and he's like, "Let's go see that." So he went over. He went over there and saw that the other day.
I
Yep.
love it. Well,
Yeah.
Pete, I love it. Now it's on video here, but what'd be fun is like map it out and because I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
saying I wonder how many are on, the
Yeah.
East Coast,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna get some of these
Yep.
other ones.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I will do that.
A
Yep.
sidebar, Sarah Checo told me one of her bucket list things, but I don't know how far back they go, but probably pretty far. She and Kevin visit presidential libraries.
Oh yeah,
So
and that yeah, that could be another one too. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Definitely.
another, especially if you like that museum, you would like that
Oh,
too.
I love that place. I can't believe it. I think that shut down, didn't it? The museum.
It did. It's funny. Kevin and
Yeah.
I were just talking about it. We
Yeah.
loved that.
And
Loved.
it's like, where did all that stuff go?
I
All
know.
those newspapers and stuff. I'm sure they didn't throw them away, but
Oh
it was just
no,
amazing how
no.
you could pull up a newspaper from the 1880s and read
They
up
had
on
so
whatever
many
was
cool
going on
things.
back then.
Just the way. Well, it's funny. Anybody that's watching this, they're going to be like, "What are they talking about? What's that thing again?" We'll put it in the notes, Peter.
There you
Okay.
go.
So, this is a question you guys often ask. Actually, it's Paul Ringwood that always asks for it. Like, what three presidents would be in your golf foursome?
Ooh, golf foursome. Ooh, golf. I mean, golf foursomes. I would have. Well, first up, Dwight Eisenhower would have to be. You know why?
Why?
Because he was a member at Augusta, so I'd be
Oh.
playing at Augusta. So that's first. I believe John Kennedy was a good golfer. So Eisenhower, Kennedy, and I gotta pick one of the early ones. I, yeah, I mean, now is that to play golf with, or is that somebody you want to just hang out and talk to?
No, because maybe there'll be another question. Like
Okay,
golf.
so
So think like that's a really good
oh
point.
oh no, yeah, okay. So my golf foursome is John Kennedy, Dwight Eisenhower, and Gerald Ford. Do you know why Ford?
Well, didn't he fall a lot on the golf course?
No, what he used to do is he'd play in these celebrity programs and he'd be constantly hitting people. He'd pull one into the crowd and injure somebody or whatever. So yeah, I'd have to play with him and see what's going on with his swing. So Ford, Kennedy, and Eisenhower, and we're playing at Augusta.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so um, why don't we just limit it to like an early president, a middle president, and a more recent president? You're gonna invite them to the Ringwood Christmas party. What three?
Under okay, under what pretext? Like I'll go back to George H.W. Bush.
Okay.
I think he would entertain everybody with stories and he'd be a great guy to just hang out with.
Okay. Love
So
it.
I'm going to go with George H.W. Bush.
Yep.
Um, I, I mean, let's see. I think Teddy Roosevelt would be good.
He'd probably be fun.
He was an adventurer.
Mhm.
Very, very
Ride by horse.
adventurous kind of guy. He'd be good. And then early on, probably Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. I mean,
He wrote the Declaration of Independence. So yeah, yeah,
and he
yeah.
could do a lot of name dropping.
Yeah, he had some good contacts. So, and he had a really cool house. So,
Yeah, he did. He was a deep thinker.
Oh, he was.
Uh, okay, so you have to, you've got to read, you went backward from Bush, so you've got to read Clinton.
No.
Oh,
I
no,
already read
no, no,
Clinton.
no.
Yeah. I went ahead and did. What did I do? Yeah,
Did you,
no, Clinton was before Bush. So, um,
did you read Obama?
no, I have to read Obama, an unauthorized biography of Trump, and Biden when his comes out. So
Okay,
those three. Yep.
so
After
Biden,
Washington. Now
Biden,
the Washington book, it's 1,500 pages.
dang.
So and I'm like a third of the way through. So it's going to be a while before I wrap that one up. So,
Okay, so also make your little map of everybody's
oh,
home.
absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Also, I want you to go back and, if you can, from your book and your Kindle notes, how many pages you read?
Ooh. Okay.
Thousands.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Last
That's a definite.
question. Ready?
Okay. Yep.
You got to read Obama, Trump, Biden.
Yes.
There's going to be another one.
Kamala Harris.
High five, Pete.
High five. High five.
All right, buddy. I'm going to turn the recording off and then we'll say goodbye.
All right.
Thanks so much.